Lotte takes a new leap beyond its boundaries. Our change will lead to better lives for all. New Lotte, the power of a better world. New today, better tomorrow. Lotte.
Coming up on Arirang News. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol, who's in Hanoi, meets his Vietnamese counterpart and agrees to step up security cooperation amid growing North Korean threats and geopolitical tension in the South China Sea. Seoul has also decided to increase economic cooperation funding for Vietnam by 2030. Also in Hanoi, President Yoon signed a record number of memorandums of understanding in fields including defense and healthcare at the Korea-Vietnam Business Forum. With the monsoon season just around the corner here in South Korea, authorities check safety protocols so that the nation can be fully prepared. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. This is Peunji filling in for Ji-young. We start in Hanoi, where South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol met his Vietnamese counterpart, Vo Van Thuong, on the second day of his state visit, during which they agreed to step up security cooperation as President Yoon labels North Korea's nuclear and missiles as the most urgent security threat in the region. Our presidential correspondent Oh Soo-young is in Hanoi to fill us in from the ground.
South Korea and Vietnam have penned over a dozen deals to initiate their strategic partnership to overcome regional geopolitical and trade uncertainties. During his three-day state visit to Hanoi, President Yoon Suk-yeol on Friday held a summit with his Vietnamese counterpart Vo Van Thuong, signing a joint action plan.
오늘 양국은 포괄적 전략 동반자 관계 이행을 위한 행동 계획을 채택하고 한 베트남 관계를 더욱 내실 있게 발전시켜 나아가기로 했습니다.
Vietnam prioritizes South Korea in economic and social development projects and foreign policy and wishes to develop a comprehensive strategic partnership practically and effectively in the long run.
Seoul and Hanoi first agreed to establish an annual dialogue channel between their foreign ministers and strengthen Vietnam's maritime security capabilities through naval and coast guard cooperation, as well as the transfer of retired Korean vessels. Their new security deals were reached amid growing geopolitical tension and territorial claims in the South China Sea. A presidential official stressed that the amount of retired vessels transferred to Vietnam would not be at a level that would raise eyebrows in Beijing. Both Seoul and Hanoi wish to have an orderly state of relations in the Indo-Pacific for regional peace and global trade. On economic relations, the leaders agreed to establish a working group with a goal of reaching $150 billion in trade volume by 2030. To foster greater trade ties, the two sides penned MOUs, including the recognition of driver's licenses, certificates of origin, and labour-related rules, and greater support for startups. To collaborate in crucial future industries, the two sides will establish a mineral supply chain centre and cooperate in energy and infrastructure spanning LNG power generation and smart cities. Seoul will also increase its economic cooperation funding for Vietnam from the current $2 billion to $4 billion by 2030. It will also expand grants for development projects in crucial areas like transport, health, climate change and digital transformation, as well as joint science and tech cooperation. In light of South Korea's efforts to become a global pivotal state as a more active stakeholder in the global community, the 11-member Association of Southeast Asian Nations is also a crucial partner in securing sea lines for trade and regional stability, including handling a nuclear North Korea. Thuong on Friday said Vietnam is ready to contribute to denuclearizing the Korean peninsula. A senior Yoon official told reporters Seoul takes this to mean Hanoi supports denuclearizing North Korea and will closely cooperate with Seoul on Pyongyang's provocations and Korean peninsula security issues.
Going forward, Yoon said he hopes Seoul-Hanoi ties will expand as a gateway to establish a comprehensive strategic partnership with the ASEAN as a whole, marking 35 years of their dialogue partnership in 2024. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News, Hanoi.
In related news, President Yoon has pledged South Korea's continued support for partnership with Vietnam as it seeks to become an advanced country by 2045. Speaking with Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh on Friday afternoon, the South Korean leader said he has a strong vision of Vietnam's prosperous future, having witnessed firsthand the country's dynamic economy during his three-day visit. Noting South Korea's contribution to the Vietnamese economy as its largest foreign investor and growing development partner, Pham says Seoul has become a global pivotal state, and Yoon's trip will serve as a basis for a more substantive and comprehensive bilateral relationship. Yoon on Friday also scheduled separate meetings with the General Secretary of the ruling Communist Party, Nguyen Phu Trong, and National Assembly Chair Vuong Dinh Hue, seeking to deepen Seoul's working relationship with Hanoi's top leadership. Also in Hanoi, a remarkable development in the strengthening of economic ties between South Korea and Vietnam, as a record-setting number of MOUs are signed during a business forum there. Our Kim Hyun-sung reports.
A record 111 memorandums of understanding were penned at the Korea-Vietnam Business Forum held Friday local time on the occasion of South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol's visit to Vietnam, signaling closer economic cooperation between the two countries.
서울과 하노이의 물리적 거리는 3,000km가 넘지만 양국은 무역 투자는 물론 인적 교류와 문화에 이르기까지 거의 모든 분야에서 핵심 파트너가 되었습니다.
South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol and Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh were present at the forum, as well as 600 delegates, including government officials. The forum proved to be a hotspot of collaboration, with 54 MOUs signed in sectors such as defense, healthcare, and food, while 28 additional MOUs were signed for technologically advanced industries like electric vehicles. When including infrastructure and key minerals, the total came to an unprecedented 111. In the spirit of camaraderie, President Yoon cited a Vietnamese proverb.
베트남 속담에 메콩강이 천년을 변함없이 흐르는 것처럼 친구의 가치는 영원히 사라지지 않을 것이라는 말이 있습니다. 오늘 포럼을 계기로 양국의 우정이 영원히 지속되기를 바랍니다.
The two countries in their previous summit had promised to scale up bilateral trade to $150 billion by 2030. Reiterating this commitment on Friday, President Yoon voiced his anticipation for closer collaboration moving forward. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
In other news, the Korean government says it'll find ways to receive real-time information from Japan to get a clearer view of whether its neighbor is adhering to the discharge standards for the release of Fukushima wastewater. Our Choi Min-jung has more.
The South Korean government has vowed to seek ways to get real-time information from Japan on the discharge of Fukushima wastewater. During its weekday briefings on the matter, the government said this is to confirm that the discharge goes in accordance with the plan.
The most important thing for us is to check and monitor whether Tokyo Electric Power Company can continue to meet the discharging standards when the actual discharge begins, and ensure that the facilities and equipment are operating properly.
The official added that the Japan Atomic Energy Agency recently disclosed the results of the K4 tank's water level analysis on its website. These tanks store water treated through a purification system known as Advanced Liquid Processing System, or ALPS, before it is released into the ocean. The Korea Institute of Nuclear Safety is currently reviewing the data. Meanwhile, the government announced that it opened a wastewater policy information platform containing the government's response and information related to the discharge of contaminated water. There, the public can check the current status of radiation testing of imported foods. Owners of fish markets can use the website to apply for radiation testing on their seafood. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
As the monsoon season approaches, South Korea will soon come under heavy rain. Forecasts say Jeju Island and the southern regions will be the first to be hit by torrential downpours, prompting the authorities here to thoroughly check safety measures. Our Han Sung-woo reports.
Heavy monsoon rains expected to pound South Korea, starting with Jeju Island and the southern regions on Sunday. before spreading nationwide the day after. In fact, forecasts are predicting heavy, localized torrential rainfall in many parts of the country from Sunday to Tuesday.
If it begins our forecast, the monsoon will start in Jeju 6 days later than average and in the central and southern regions 2 days later than average.
The monsoon front will then reportedly head down south mid-next week before moving back up north again to pour heavy rain across the country. And in preparation for what's to come, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo on Friday visited the Korea Meteorological Administration to check on safety protocols, including emergency text messages that will warn the public of floods and other natural disasters.
We must be fully prepared for climate disasters. I asked the Korea Meteorological Administration to devotedly play the role of cavalry scouts who prioritize public safety over all else and swiftly but accurately alert the people on such disasters.
He also made his way to flood-prone homes near the Dorimcheon stream and urged for greater efforts, like installing sturdy water shields to better protect the people there, especially those living in semi-basement apartments known as 반지하. Prime Minister Han also called on relevant ministries and local governments to make sure residents can be safely evacuated from their homes, if required. 한성우, Arirang News.
Over in Europe, central banks there have raised their key rates to tamp down inflation, while more rate hikes are likely in the U.S. following a recent pause. Experts raise concerns over the possibility of an economic recession. Our business correspondent Shin-young reports.
Central banks around the world are still tightening their monetary policies to tame inflation. The Bank of England raised interest rates by 0.5 percentage point to 5% on Thursday, reaching their highest level since the global financial crisis in 2008. An increase of 25 basis points was expected, but consumer prices during the month of May accelerated at a faster pace than expected at 8.7%, leading to a larger rate hike. The same day, Norway also hiked its rates by 50 basis points, while the Swiss National Bank raised theirs by 25 basis points. Even Turkey has almost doubled its interest rates to 15% after a 2-year freeze. Just a week after the U.S. Fed's brief rate hike pause, its chair Jerome Powell has once again hinted that more hikes are on the way, saying there's still a long way to go. With the U.S. Fed and other central banks eyeing more rate hikes, there are growing concerns of a global economic recession.
That is going to make the chances of recession in the second half of the year as well as the next year higher. Also, the consumption and investment seems to have come down compared to, say, 2 or 3 years ago, the pre-pandemic period, and that's in major part because of the rise in interest rates.
He added that these are the reasons to have a pessimistic outlook for this year's global economic growth, which is at a lower level compared to last year's growth rate. In fact, according to the World Bank, the latest global growth outlook for 2023 has been set at 2.1%, which is well below the 2022 growth rate of 3.1%. Meanwhile, the expert says that the Bank of Korea, which has once again frozen its key interest rate in May, is expected to maintain the current level as the country's inflation rate is significantly lower than some European countries and the U.S. However, it may have no choice but to raise the rate when considering the currency market. This is because if the gap between the Fed's rate and the BOK's policy rate widens, there is an increased likelihood of capital outflow and interest rate instability. Shin-young, Arirang News.
Over in Washington, D.C., 3 days of official high-level talks between Korea and the U.S. on cybersecurity came to an end on Thursday. According to the presidential office here, the senior steering group will serve as the center for joint efforts to ensure timely responses to related threats. In essence, officials at the National Security Office and their counterparts in the U.S. National Security Council have highlighted the importance of tackling North Korea's illicit cyber activities aimed at funding the country's hostile weapons programs. Earlier this week, U.S. President Joe Biden compared his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping to dictators. Despite the immediate denunciation from Beijing, Biden has dismissed the repercussions of his remarks. Our Shin Se-byuk reports.
U.S. President Joe Biden on Thursday downplayed the impact of his recent comments comparing Chinese President Xi Jinping to a dictator. He said at a news conference that calling Xi a dictator did not undermine Washington's relationship with Beijing.
I expect to be meeting with President Xi sometime in the future, in the near term, and I don't think it's had any real consequence.
He also suggested that he would not tone down his rhetoric on China in the future. Biden's comments on Thursday followed Chinese ambassador to the U.S. Xie Fang warned of consequences if Washington isn't to take any immediate and earnest actions. Earlier in the day, Fang made strong protests to senior White House and State Department officials. The Chinese embassy called Biden's earlier comments a smear, which seriously contradicts basic facts and undermines mutual trust. Speaking at a campaign fundraiser in California on Tuesday, Biden equated Xi to a dictator and claimed that Xi was embarrassed when the Chinese balloon was blown off course without his knowledge. It prompted a fierce backlash from Beijing.
They're an open political provocation China is strongly dissatisfied with and firmly opposed to this.
Biden's dictator remark also came only days after U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken made his visit to China, where he said the two countries had made progress towards getting their relations back on track. However, now given the Chinese embassy is describing the nature and impact of Biden's comment as very negative, this could add more tension to Washington-Beijing relations and could undermine the progress made during Blinken's trip. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
North Korea is likely to use its nuclear weapons as a tool for threat rather than an actual attack. This is according to the U.S. Office of the Director of National Intelligence on Thursday. The office believes North Korea's Kim Jong-un will resort to coercive measures, including nuclear threats to gain political objectives and to deter a strong Seoul-Washington response. The office also shed doubt on prospects of an offensive by Pyongyang using nuclear weapons to seize power on the peninsula, explaining that such a scenario is only likely if North Korea could outmatch South Korea's military capabilities, deter U.S. intervention, and secure unwavering Chinese support. This Sunday, June 25th, marks the 73rd anniversary of the start of the Korean War. Ahead of this day, our culture correspondent Song Yoo-jin explored the diverse way South Korea is commemorating the Korean War and expressing gratitude to those who fought in it.
June 25th, 1950, the start of the Korean War. The war divided Korea in two and claimed the lives of more than 1 million people. Every June, people remember and honor those who fought in the war. These days, cutting-edge technology plays a key role. This lab in the city of Suwon, just south of Seoul, is where war veterans are brought back to life using the magic of artificial intelligence. With just a few clicks and a bit of typing, old blurry photos become crystal clear, bursting with color. Professor Woo Simon and his team are working wonders with an AI model called Generative Facial Prior, recovering the images of around 400 Korean War veterans.
Applying AI technology, like latest technology for something public good and socially good purpose, and acknowledging those hidden heroes and hidden war heroes and unknown war hero, we can actually acknowledge them through this opportunity is actually great.
And there's more. You can take a journey back in time with the help of augmented reality. The War Memorial of Korea, a museum dedicated to preserving the history of the Korean War, has introduced an AR game. With your smartphone and a complimentary guidebook from the museum, you become a Korean War soldier desperate to regain memories of the war. Solve puzzles and complete missions that walk you through the 3-year-long war, from its beginnings on June 1950 to the signing of the Armistice Agreement in July 1953, while exploring the museum's exhibition halls. There are also exhibitions paying homage to the war heroes. This one at the Seoul Museum of History in the city center showcases the personal belongings of war veterans, along with magazines and articles documenting the war. From battle-worn uniforms and badges to heart-wrenching photographs of war refugees, it's a solemn reminder of the sacrifices made 7 decades ago. From exhibitions to AR and AI, this is how Korea continues to honor and remember those who selflessly gave everything to save the lives of millions. 송유진, Arirang News.
The missing submersible in the North Atlantic Ocean was found destroyed due to a catastrophic implosion, killing all 5 people aboard. Searching for more debris, officials tried to piece together what went wrong. Our Chung Eun-ju has the details.
The Titanic-bound submersible that went missing Sunday suffered a catastrophic implosion, killing all 5 people on board. The Titan, operated by the U.S.-based company OceanGate Expeditions, had been missing since contact with its surface support ship was lost on Sunday morning. A search and rescue operation had pinned hopes on the vessel's 96-hour supply of oxygen. On Thursday morning, however, the U.S. Coast Guard said it had discovered a debris field within the search area for the missing sub, including the vessel's tail cone and 2 sections of the pressure hull. Rear Admiral John Mauger of the 1st Coast Guard District told reporters that an unmanned deep-sea remotely operated vehicle deployed from a Canadian ship spotted the wreckage of the submersible about 488 meters from the bow of the Titanic, 4 kilometers beneath the surface in a remote corner of the North Atlantic.
In consultation with experts from within the Unified Command, the debris is consistent with the catastrophic loss of the pressure chamber. Upon this determination, we immediately notified the families.
An underwater implosion refers to the sudden inward collapse of the vessel. Experts say that at the depth of the Titanic wreck, such an implosion would have happened in a fraction of a millisecond. The search for more debris from the submersible continues as officials try to piece together when the implosion occurred and what exactly went wrong with the sub. Rear Admiral Mauger added that it will take time to determine a specific timeline of events in the incredibly complex case of the Titan's failure. A retired FBI special agent and former leader of an FBI dive team told CNN that it won't be possible to know what happened to the submersible unless you recover the majority of the vessel. The 5 passengers aboard the Titan were the company's founder and chief executive officer, Stockton Rush, who was piloting the sub, along with British billionaire and explorer Hamish Harding, Pakistani-born businessman Shahada Dawood and his 19-year-old son Suleiman, and French oceanographer and Titanic expert Paul-Henri Nargeolet. Chung Eun-ju, Arirang News.
More sweltering conditions are in the forecast tomorrow. Seoul will be under searing heat for the daytime, with highs of 32 degrees Celsius for the entire weekend. Under plenty of sunshine, the sun's UV radiation will be intense as well. Make sure to wear your sun protective items when heading out. Unstable atmospheric conditions will produce light showers for Gangwon-do province. A monsoonal rain front will approach the country on Sunday. Jeju Island and parts of the south coast will see the first round of monsoonal showers. By next week, the entire nation will be under rainy spells. Morning temperatures will be a couple degrees higher than the seasonal norms. Tomorrow, Seoul will start off at 22 degrees. Baking hot conditions are expected for the daytime. Highs in Seoul and Gwangju will get up to 32. Daegu will make it to 31 degrees. Along with the monsoon rain next week, the extreme heat will ease off. Have a great weekend, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all for our Friday night newscast. Thank you for watching. Hope everyone has a great weekend and a good night.
I'm live! 저를 도와주시는 분들이
저희와 함께 해주시는 세션분들
아무리 봐도 먹지 텐션 같은데 아니라고 아무도 안 하는 거고
좋아요.